Good morning, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you here to this Glasgow Chamber of Commerce Chamber Mission Series. My name's Hazel Gulliver. I'm Director of Engagement with Scottish Power, and this topic of the session we're in today is one that is extremely close to my heart. I mean, everything we do at the moment is through the prism of net zero, so I'm delighted to be involved in this conversation, sharing it with our guests online and with Kirsty here next to me. So what we'd like this to be is kind of a relaxed, informal, conversational discussion. We'd like to get everyone involved. So if you have any questions, do let me know. But first of all, what I'll do is I'll turn to our panellists, so give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. If you could all just introduce yourselves and give a little couple of minutes about your own experience and background, that would be great. So Kirsty, I'll turn to you first, if that's okay.
Thanks so much, Hazel. So my name's Kirsty. I'm a director and co-owner of environmental consultancy MacArthur Green. We're a Glasgow-based business, and our team carry out wildlife surveys to help support clients in the renewables sector, such as Scottish Power, to get wind farms up and developed. And more widely, what we've been doing is looking at how we operate our business. And we've become a carbon negative business. And hopefully today I'll get to talk to you a wee bit more about that. But enough from me.
Thank you very much. So Aziz Ahmad, would you be able to introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Aziz Ahmad. I'm the Vice President Director and the CEO of PT Indica Energy Tbk. It's an Indonesian listed company. We have been focusing on coal sectors, with the sector contributing more than 75% of our revenue in 2020. And we have initiated our intention really and our commitment to achieve a net zero emission by 2050 by way of the diversifying away our investment from coal to non-coal sector, with a target of 50% revenue in 2025 coming from non-coal sectors. That's about my brief introduction. I'm delighted to be invited here, Hazel. Thank you.
Felix Dane, if I could turn to you now, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel, and hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Well, I'm Felix Dane. I'm the CEO and founder of Hendrik Limited. We're a very young new company, and we aim to produce hydrogen fuel cell powered ATVs and UTVs, that's quads and gators, for the agricultural and the recreational sports sector. By that, we want to decarbonize farming and outdoor sports, and we aim to focus on this with a holistic approach. So we look very much at the materials we use, the supply chain, and also the way we manufacture, to do all of that in an as sustainable manner as possible. And we have an app developing alongside, because we think you cannot separate hardware and software anymore, especially with new technologies. And through this app, you will be then able to purchase also green hydrogen. We very much emphasize on green hydrogen. And I'm happy to discuss more during the session.
Thank you, Felix. I'm happy to hear you talking about green hydrogen, but we can come to that later. And Walter Kressel, finally, thank you.
Hello, to be a part at your session. My name is Walter Kressel. I'm from Austria. We are a clean tech scale-up here. We founded the company 3 years ago. We are now 110 people and scaling rapidly by 15 people a month and 40 to 45% a month by revenues. And we are building decentralized energy systems based on solar, battery storages, and e-mobility chargers, combined with a Internet of Energy platform called Intuity, and the NEOM Group, who combines all the hardware and software and services, focuses on becoming a gigacorn. What means a gigacorn means we want to decarbonize or help to save minimum 1 billion of tons of gigatons of CO2 in the next 6 years. And I would say Austria, Germany, and Swiss is pretty ready for that, and we help them to bring energy in the decentralized real estate sector for industrial and living applications.
Thank you very much. So just to kick things off, and we're all coming at this from different angles, but we're all obviously focused on the same goal. So I think it would be quite interesting for the audience to hear what you all, in your different sectors, what do you see the future of your own sector? If we could, we'll do in reverse order this time. So Felix, if you could start, please, that would be great. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think the future somehow looks good because there's a hydrogen boom at the moment. There's an incredible uptake in terms of investment, and that will mean that fuel cells and the hydrogen itself will fall in prices, and that will make it more widely available. That is definitely a welcome development. I see also a lot of combustion engines being tweaked to basically run on hydrogen. That I find somewhat more problematic unless you apply NOx filters. Because otherwise we risk replacing one problem with another. And so that's why we very much focus on fuel cells. And the fuel cell itself for our vehicles will have to be tweaked a little bit because off-road requirements are different, and we want to have no impact on the life expectancy of these fuel cells so that we don't have to replace them too quickly.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Aziz, I'll come to you now.
Yeah, well, I guess in my sector, this is a very challenging and a hot topic in all over the COP20, right? The coal sectors, and all of our coal are basically consumed by the power plant, whereas about 25 to 30% are consumed domestically. The rest goes to the export market. We are all aware of the challenges in this coal process, and we are also part of the government long-term strategy in terms of low carbon and climate resilience. But what we are currently focusing on is really the transition from coal-based power or energy generation sector to a more renewables and climate-friendly power generation. So the focus is really about the transition. And as you may be aware of, like in my case, we are the third largest coal producers in Indonesia, producing about 35 million tons, and we employ direct and indirect about 30,000 people within the 300,000 population in this remote area. So it's not just about reducing our exposure or our revenue in the coal sector and switching to the non-coal sectors, but transitioning and how to finance the transition. In our case, what we have been doing in the past 3 years, we have invested in non-coal sectors, and we will continue to do so because we have committed not to invest further in the coal sectors. And at the same time, we have divested our asset, which is in the coal sector as well. So those two basically are the one of the part of our strategy to diversify our portfolio. That's number one. Number two, decarbonizing our operation, and we have accomplished something, but it's still far from the target. We have installed in our mining and coal operation a solar power. We are in the process of converting some of our vehicles in the mining operation to electric-based vehicles. So those are the initiatives we are currently doing. And on top of that the digitalization is key to reduce our carbon footprint, because that will relate to the fuel efficiency and all those stuff. So in a way, we have the 3Ds strategy, which is diversification, decarbonization, and digitalization. Those are in our those are our strategy in terms of transitioning ourselves from coal-based to non-coal-based companies.
Thank you. And I think the concept of the energy transition is something that's really close to all of us, and that just transition angle that we're all looking at, maybe we can come back to that a bit later, but from a Scottish Power perspective, it's really interesting to hear someone from the coal sector talking about the challenges that you face, because that's something that we have faced in the past as well, and now we've closed our coal, but we recognise that it's not the same process for everyone all over the world. So maybe we can touch on that just transition angle a bit later, but in the meantime, Kirsty, I'll pass to you.
So I would answer the question in two ways. In one part, we work in the renewables sector predominantly. And so in terms of the future for that, I mean, this is our busiest year ever supporting renewable developments, and I don't see that changing. The second aspect of the question, I think, in terms of what we see happening is, we have become a carbon negative business, and I think that there's a massive market here. That's going to be led in by different, I suppose, forces, you could say. One, public demand. Separately, shareholders and investors, they're looking at the whole ESG piece, and they're looking to see what they can do. And Scotland has a particular area to shine here, I feel, whether that is in woodland plantation schemes or if it is in peatland restoration, any of these things. I see massive market opportunities in Scotland for investment and for businesses looking to change. We're an SME, we're a 30-person outfit, 1.7 million turnover, that sort of thing. So it's that kind of numbers that we're playing with. And if we can go carbon negative, to do so, to start that process, to calculate your carbon footprint, to manage your carbon emissions down as much as you can, and then to look at offsetting where you can't reduce your emissions, I think that there's just going to be a massive groundswell of people looking to do the same. They just need to know where to start. And I think events like COP, obviously, people start talking about it and they start making changes. And I'm quite excited about what happens next in that space, Hazel. So
yeah, no, I would absolutely agree. I mean, we haven't said the words COP26 yet, but I think
I thought I'd dodge it.
The buzz that is around Glasgow at the moment, everybody is talking about this now. Every conversation you have, everything we do, everyone who approaches me wants to talk about COP26. And I know we're only at the beginning, but surely that must give us some kind of optimism for this very complicated period of discussion. Walter, I'll come to you. Thank you, if you don't mind.
So bringing to the people, all of us, safer, cleaner, and cheaper energy, it will only can be provided by renewable energies, and we have to do that in a centralized way. But we also have to do it on a decentralized way. Then we need the digitalization, we need the capital, and we need the people the working hard to focus on that. And because the centralized and the decentralized have to work together hand in hand to close that loop. And the sweet spot is already here. So solar and batteries and the software and cloud performance is already done. So by combining the right products, the right solutions, and ramping massively that up with the customers, it will helps to solve the big problem of the electricity demand in the future. So, and this is the main goal, where we can also decarbonize and bring safer and cleaner energy to all our peoples. They live, they work, they drive their car, they use mobility, and probably also to mind their money. Yeah? So there is no way out of that.
I'll just turn to each of you in turn, just picking up on some of the things you've mentioned there in your opening remarks. So, Aziz, I'll come to you first. So obviously you're very closely involved in the thermal generation industry, production and generation. So I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about the adoption of clean technologies in thermal generation and how that might look in future.
Yeah, well, what we have investment in coal-fired power plant, which install or apply a supercritical boiler technology, right? And then we are in the process, also at the final stage of the expansion program, which apply ultra supercritical boiler technology. And these are more efficient compared to the more conventional coal-fired power plant, which could give you about 45% efficiency. So those technology we have applied, and then this technology can also consume coal with lower calorific value, lower sulfur, and lower ash content. So that's what we are trying to achieve because of all the emission limit, emission regulation and compliance and all those stuff. That's number one. Number two, we are in the process. I mean, this is still at the exploration stage on how to apply the carbon capture and storage technology in our plants. So this is still ongoing exploration, and we're very much open for any inputs and support for in that matter.
Important developments in your sector, that's for sure. Walter, if I could come to you now. I suppose I was just wondering what kind of technologies you're seeing employed when you're talking about decentralized and centralized systems going forward. Are you seeing any particular technology specific to either one, or are they common to both, or do you have any thoughts on that?
The main important thing is to bring in flexibility into the grid. And by bringing flexibility into the grid, we are not talking about long-time storage, we're talking about daily to week storage. Our applications focus mainly on lithium-ion LFP batteries in case of 10 kilowatt hours and 2 megawatt hours. And here we help to gain own consumption, to bring down the peaks to the grid, and also to coordinate all devices and interactions with the electricity facility. Electricity to be traded locally between centralized and decentralized producers. And for that is the flexibility to the grid connection, the main key. And for that, I think is also supercapacitors, up to hydrogen, up to water pumps storage, big thing what we need. We need all of them. And to combine that in a virtual power plant will be the goal to not to bring. I mean, there is one problem in our 4 elements. Yeah, it is fire, and to turning fire to electricity will save much of those problems we had of the all 4 elements. So, and if you think about that, I think we can be much faster with all other services on top.
Kirsty, I was really interested about what you were saying about being a carbon negative business. That sounds very exciting. So I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, okay. So back in 2016, we were talking about the Paris Agreement and actually what we could do as a business to do more. So we've focused on the renewables industry for a very long time. And we're clear that the work that we do has a positive impact. But actually, we needed to internalise that and to look at how we run a business. And that involves some uncomfortable conversations. So we were looking at how we can fundamentally change the way that we operate our business to make a positive difference. So that for us took a 2-pronged approach. We bought a piece of land in Argyll. For those who don't know, the west coast of Scotland is extremely beautiful. We bought a piece of land there and we planted almost 30,000 trees using some funding from the Scottish Government. And we went for native deciduous trees, not conifers, but in fact, you know, your lovely granny pines and that kind of thing. And we then added some biodiversity bonus features, if you like, some owl boxes, bat boxes, bird boxes, to make what would be then a fantastic woodland reserve. Now, trees take between 5 and 6 years to meaningfully sequester carbon. So in the meantime, it was clear that for the emissions that we couldn't get rid of, we were going to have to do something to offset our footprint. And that for us involves buying carbon units that were verified gold standard, so funding projects that would help us to offset. So we took that to our team. We got our team to vote for the schemes that they felt were most important to them. So that included, for example, solar schemes in countries where they need electricity to be more accessible, as an example of that kind of thing that we've gone for. So 2 prongs, and hopefully then eventually we've a double offset. That's the important thing to say with carbon negative. We've calculated our carbon footprint. We are managing our emissions down, because offsetting should only ever be a very last resort. And then we keep this continuum moving forward. It's not a destination. You don't do this process once. You keep revisiting it to look back again. So that has involved us getting a carbon manager appointed, for example, to help it pervade our entire corporate culture. So even as a small organisation, we can be thinking about what next. So that has involved electric vehicles, for example, and EV charge points, and we're not stopping there. It's a continual, difficult conversation that businesses need to be having, but we need to get into that space and self-examine what we're doing and do more. And I think with COP, there you go, I said it. I think with COP, hopefully more people are alive to the fact that there are things happening, and they're having the conversations which can help us all make similar positive differences. So I hope that answers your question, Hazel.
Absolutely, and I think what I'd like to see is, having come across Kirsty personally and professionally, her business's approach to this it should be an inspiration to all of us. That just goes to show what can be done if you really put your mind to it. So
there we go.
Well done. So hydrogen, Felix. I mentioned hydrogen before, and also at Scottish Power, green hydrogen is a particular issue for us. So, and I guess the question around hydrogen into the future is. The real environmental benefits depend on where you source your hydrogen from. So I wanted to ask you, Hendrik, how do you propose to address that challenge?
Well, we per se are more focused on the application where hydrogen is then used, but what we try to push is really the idea of green hydrogen. And you are absolutely right that it depends where you produce hydrogen, and that means, to me, especially in developing countries, they can play a great role. Instead of building up great new grids to electrify everything, you can save those costs by producing hydrogen with fantastic renewable energy. And of course, the outcome of a solar panel in, say, Namibia or in Brazil is significantly higher, same for wind power, than it is in many of the northern countries. And therefore, I think that hydrogen can play a big role. And then any excess energy you produce with renewables, you can then use for producing hydrogen. And then you store that energy instead of a battery, basically, in a large hydrogen tank. And I think this is what we really push for as an idea, and we aim to use purely green hydrogen, because I think in the long run it is more economically viable anyway, because you can eliminate the cost of the capture and carbon and storage, and you also don't have the rising costs of basically the natural gas, which is one of the most common forms to produce hydrogen from. So I really see green hydrogen as the future, and I think if we don't manage with green hydrogen, we won't manage at all with hydrogen.
No, I agree completely. So and I'd just like to pick up on a couple of things you mentioned there. You mentioned Namibia and Brazil. So how do you see your product working in those countries which are unlikely to see the benefits as quickly as perhaps some other countries which are a bit further down the line in the development?
I see it a bit similar to the mobile phone. You see, when the mobile phone was rolled out, and suddenly Africa had a massive uptake of of mobile phones, whereas they haven't even had a proper national phone grid with landlines as we had it. So to some degree, they just overtook, and I think something similar might play out here with hydrogen, because it is cheaper to move hydrogen through a pipeline than to build an entire electricity grid. And then you can have decentralized production of hydrogen as well, especially from farm waste, or even, you know, small scale renewable power stations with combined wind and solar panels. And I think therefore the rollout in these countries will probably be slightly delayed, but once it picks up, it will be significantly faster than it was here in the north.
Okay, thank you. Let's stick with sort of issues a bit further afield, and I'll go back to you, Aziz. And I was just wondering how you provide complementary products and services sort of to the domestic and international market via Indica Energy, basically to capture those growth opportunities.
Yes, I guess what we are currently focusing is in investing in the non-coal sectors. We have invested in the renewable sectors together with a partner from India, which is supported by a RISE fund, the RISE fund, the largest impact fund in the world. And we also exploring to invest further in a nature-based solution. So we have in our coal operation, we have managed about 150,000 hectares of forest concession. So some part of it, we will convert it to the energy forest. So we will plant the trees, and with sustainable management, the trees with very fast growing a very fast cycle of growing, and we will need to convert that then to a wood pellet, so it's biomass energy. And then the other part is the electric vehicles. It's part of, again, of the overall strategy of Indica Energy in terms of diversifying away or diversifying our portfolio.
Thanks. Oh, thank you. So some big questions now. Maybe I'll start with you, Kirsty. So from your perspective, how can a renewables-focused business help everyone, all the rest of us, to decarbonise?
Okay. So there's two aspects to this. So there is the fact that renewables are bringing about a massive decarbonisation of the electricity network in the UK, and that I think is hopefully an accepted truth by the audience today. But I do think that renewables, because we're just really quite good at what we do, it means we've got a switched on and engaged, group of people who are already leading the way in this climate change mitigation process, right? And so we are switched on and informed, and therefore can go forward and influence change and lead. I think that there is a lot of work that we can do in helping people to also decarbonise how they run their business. And this has been the difficult conversation that we've had as a business, was realising that 94% of our carbon emissions was vehicle use, for example. That's quite uncomfortable, because our survey team, if they're going to do a bird survey in the middle of nowhere, need to get there safe. How can you do that differently? So what we've done is we've tried to look at small innovations. Innovation is sometimes a bit of an intimidating word. I don't consider myself to be particularly creative. So when I think of innovation, I think, oh my goodness, designing something new and fancy. And that's not me. But actually, the way you run your business and small iterations and processes and efficiencies, if we're all looking at that, we can make a change. So vehicles for us. Yes, we've got an EV charge point installed, and we got 2 electric vehicles this year. And what we're doing is we're looking at a small thing. So we have a 4x4 left on site, and we use an electric vehicle to do the commute. So our field surveyors are safe on site, but how they get there is we're smashing our carbon footprint in that space there. So it's small things like that, looking at your business processes. For us, what's helped with that is having a carbon manager who can just make that their job. And there are savings to be had in this space as well. It's not necessarily the case that doing the right thing means that your business suffers. I think people have an association that there's a cost to this and it's going to result in your profit margins reducing. We have, and it's not the case for everybody in COVID, I understand that. But for those who have had a successful past year, it's incumbent on us to make a change. And that is going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to involve persuading people to make change. But I absolutely fundamentally believe that we can do that. And I think renewables, companies like Scottish Power as well, if I may be so good as to say how well you're doing in your sector as well. So basically, there are companies who are already doing it. Talk to them, find out how they're doing it. We share our carbon footprint, our carbon management plan, all the figures online so that other people can just rinse and repeat. Don't try and recreate the wheel. Speak to people, use that village, the community that you're in, to make the changes, to take it to your board, to make it the regular drumbeat that you're having all the time. Very easy to do. You just need to do it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kirsty. Walter, I've got a big question for you as well. So we're talking about renewables and renewable generation and renewable electricity. So do you have any thoughts on how we can make electricity and water cheaper for globally?
Yeah, absolutely. So we only have to produce it on a decentralized way because the power of control by transforming energy to services will be the main key driver. So in our case, we all, as the technology-driven companies and as the technology leaders, we have to understand our carbon strategy, our own carbon strategy. So we in the NEOM Group, we focus on our own CCF, so corporate carbon footprint. Also, we focus on our product carbon footprint because we have products where we source from all over the world, which we build turnkey applications. But we also have to talk about the product carbon footprint. And on top of that, in case of the life cycle and the total cost of ownerships, how looks the service carbon footprint? So, and to combine the corporate, the product, and the service carbon footprint is that we can lead and educate our customers and the publics and whatever audience is looking for that. And I would say if we make that happen and we start it now, or we already started a few years ago, then others will follow. Yeah, and the one thing is everything we burn is fossil, even wood or biomass. Yeah. So I'm sorry for that. Yeah, and also in the hydrogen, the problem in hydrogen is that the energy we need for electrolyzers is the energy that we produce too much. So it means the surplus of energy, and I don't see any surplus in energies by industrialization and e-mobility and cooling machines. So there is no surplus in electricity. So there is no way to lose so much energy in the efficiency. Yes, for different regions. So it's only by producing everywhere by solar and store it and convert it to services. Then you can bring the cost closely down to zero. Yeah, and the money is here.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Thank you. Now, so I've asked lots of questions. I'm conscious of that. I just want to check if there's anyone in the room or online who has any questions they would like to ask any of our speakers just before we continue. Nope. Someone must have a burning question.
They're being polite.
They're being very polite. Oh, it's someone at the front. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marta from ABS. Mine was just a curiosity, most of. Do you look at the material that you buy for making the equipment, like solar panel or a wind turbine, if the material is recycled or yeah, it's just a curiosity.
To anyone in particular, or would you like to ask anyone in particular?
No, in general.
Just general.
Yeah.
General. Okay. So Felix, will I start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, we take a holistic approach. So we look at the carbon footprint of each material we buy. We look at the supply chain and the distances it travels. We look at try to incorporate as many recyclable materials as possible. So not only that we use recycled materials, but then once the vehicles come to an end of their life cycle, that it can be recycled at that time too. So yeah, absolutely. That's precisely what we'll do.
Would anyone else like to pick up the question as well?
Yeah.
Walter?
So, it's even harder than it is. Most of the component vendors don't speak about the truth. So nobody's scoping on mostly on scope 3. They most have scope 1 and scope 2. But it's even there are statistics, but which you can follow. It depends on if you have a bottom up or top down strategy on your carbon footprint thing. But as long we have it in a circular economy and we can recycle it where we have to focus on, it's not so much problems to burn. So what means if we burn solar panels or burn batteries or inverters or copper, it makes no sense. So for us, it's important in the whole life cycle and the supply chain to use the materials again and to recycle it again with renewable energies and to use it again and to stay it in the cycle. And I mean, it's a little bit more easier than it is, but not so easy by collecting all the data from the all over the world suppliers. And I would say here we need more penalties, because we talk to our vendors and give them penalties by giving them a scope on their footprint. But it's really hard to be true. Nobody understands that, even if they are in the renewable energy business.
Kirsty, I guess you have something.
Well, so I think in terms of, so we don't obviously sell a product, we're a service industry. But I think the thing to say is even in the decision of getting to electric vehicles, which for a small business is a huge investment, it was £35,000, for example, to put price tags to it. But in getting that, we went for a second-hand electric vehicle, because I think your point is that, by buying something new, you have a carbon footprint attached to that. And I think there's a lot to discuss in that space about actually the true value of any new purchase, and it's not actually reflected in the amount that you pay for the thing at the price point. And I have lots of conversations with people who are much cleverer at me, all these kinds of things, where they're saying actually in time we're going to get to the point where we'll be paying a price for the actual true purchase of a piece of equipment. So we opted to go for a second-hand electric vehicle in that instance because, yes, the batteries have a massive carbon footprint. So electric vehicles are not perfect in themselves, not blind to that at all. And the only reason that we did go for buying something new, because we are very much a kind of a use it until you can't use it anymore, is that we have more work, so we needed more vehicles in order to do the job that we're doing, which is to help renewables get planning permission in the right place, right location, and so forth. I'm not going into all of that renewables conversation today, but the key thing being is that in any purchase that you make, having that in the procurement process, I think, is something that might be, if it's okay for me to explore that quickly. So, this is a conversation which is just absolutely huge once you get started. There will be, listening today, many developer clients, and you are the people who can ask the questions. So, and I will just high-five you over here, Hazel, again, and just say that Scottish Power, we have the privilege of working with them and other developer clients, and they have now, in their procurement questionnaire, they ask us, what are you doing about your carbon footprint? Tell us more. So here's a list of the questions, and they are interrogations, and as they should be, this is important. The Scottish Government, their procurement process also now asks, what are you doing to reduce your carbon footprint in your purchasing requirements and in your efficiencies of how you run your business? So it's coming. So for those who aren't already looking at carbon footprints and aren't already engaged, you will need to be, because procurement will take care of that. So it's not, I've gone a little bit off piece with your question, but hopefully it kind of adds a bit more.
Yeah.
Good, great, Grant, I'll relax.
And thank you, Kirsty. That's just what I was going to say as well. From a large renewables developer, part of the Iberdrola group, globally the largest wind developer in the world, we have a strict code of ethics, procurement policy, engagement with our supply chain, to do everything that we can within our power to make sure we're doing the right thing. So it's just a matter of getting that message through, but as Walter was saying, it's very difficult to get the answers to these questions sometimes, and that's the challenge that we face. Not trying to implement the process, but it's getting the correct answers to the questions. Right, we're almost out of time. I'm allowed 5 minutes more. Thank you, Richard. What I was going to end with was, it would be remiss of me not to ask you about COP26. So I would just like to ask everyone, I'll start with you, Aziz, what are your hopes for this COP26? I see your blue lanyard, so I'm guessing you're involved.
Well, I guess for Indonesian case, in my company case, transition is the key, right? And in that transition, how we fuel the financial capital and the human capital of it. Because I believe that the transition, when you're doing a transition, we cannot just focus on the new established or the new ideas. We have to manage what's gonna happen to the old fashion, all the old things, and how these old things can transition themselves, and how, because we cannot leave them behind, then focusing on just the new thing, because now the scale of the old things is just so big. We just need to bring them along. So I certainly hope this COP26 can provide an alternative solution, not just, for example, the financial capital, right? Yes, it's currently, what's the difference between, in terms of the cost, for example, cost of financing for old conventional financing and the new sort of cleaner financing? My observation is none. So then I guess we need to bring that to reality, and do the action, and how can we bring the old fashion group to transition themselves. I hope the COP26 can provide a solution to that.
Walter, do you have any quick thoughts, any hopes?
Yeah. Our future is now. Join the movement of only new things. Follow new. Thank you.
Kirsty, a few last words?
Right, so really quickly. Yes, I'd just like people to follow through on what they're saying they're doing. That's a bit of a tired adage, but actually it's still pertinent. I think the Scottish Government very quickly could provide a mechanism for some small finance grants to small SMEs. If 99% of businesses in the UK are SMEs, help them to get going quicker. They did a similar scheme with cybersecurity, and that got me very much clued up in cybersecurity. Small grant scheme, then people start doing the audits every year. Small grant scheme to get your carbon footprint measured and managed. Get people started by giving them a hand. People want to do it, they just don't know where to start.
Thank you. And Felix, last word.
Well, thank you. After working in politics for about 20 years and having been to previous COPs, I think we should be realistic. What I'm positive about is that the direction of movement is clear, and we now have the private sector more on board than we ever had. Otherwise, we wouldn't even have all these new promises from all sides. And there are so many good examples. And I think this is the added value of such a COP, that one can learn from each other and exchange great views. So my overall feeling is really more positive, even if, of course, we would like to see much, much more than what will be agreed upon. But in the overall, I think the direction is clear, and the change has to happen, and it is currently happening.
Thank you. And I suppose I'll just end by echoing the optimism and the positive hope that we just need to get on with it. That's the message. So thank you very much, everyone, and thank you very much to the audience and people online watching. So have a nice day.